Hi, 7th grade. Welcome to day 4 of week 1, March 26th. So I'm just taking you through what you are expected to do today and the lesson to hopefully help you along with the work that you are responsible for today. So the first thing you want to do is complete your attendance. Make sure you get that in before 3 p.m. today. And then you're going to go right into the lesson. So I'm going to pull that up. Okay. Let me see if I can make it a little bigger. There we go. Okay, so our target for today is to work backwards again to find the parts and dimensions of the circle by using our new understanding of circles and equations. So we've been working backwards already, but this is going to introduce a new concept, which is square of a number and square root. So when we square a number, that means we are multiplying the number by itself. You guys have been doing that when you are solving the area of circles. Okay, so that's like when you have the number 3 squared, okay, that's the same as saying 3 times 3, which is equivalent to 9. Okay, so you should all already be familiar with that. The other vocabulary word is square root. The square root of a number is a value that when multiplied by itself gives that number. So square root is basically the opposite of squaring a number. You could say that it's also the inverse of squaring a number. So if I was at 9 and I wanted to get back to 3, we do what's called the square root. So the square root symbol looks like a little bit of a check symbol like that. You put the number inside, and then to figure out what the square root is, you say to yourself, okay, what number times itself equals 9? So the number that is, when multiplied by itself, equals 9 is 3, which we already saw at the top. Okay, so squaring a number is when you take that number, the larger number called our base, and you multiply it by itself 2 times, because that's what the exponent's telling you to do. In order to get back to 3 from 9, we take what's called a square root. And the square root of 9 would be 3, because when 3 is multiplied by itself, we get the answer of 9. Okay? So the next part of the lesson is a practice for you guys to, try out some of those square roots. See if you can figure out what those square roots would be. If you have a calculator, there is a square root key on there. If you have one from school, it's right here. It's above the 7. If you are using your phone calculator, usually it looks like a little check symbol. And you would type that either before or after you put the number that's underneath the square root symbol. All right, so there is a form for some classes to complete this. I know for my class, I made it into a form, so I'm just going to show you that real quick. It's right here. So you would complete this, the square root practice from the lesson, which is exactly what you just saw in the lesson. It's just in a form for you to complete and submit to me. So I know that you did that part of the lesson today. All right, so that's that. Let me keep going. So now it goes over the area of a circle. Okay, so we should all be familiar with this formula. I'm going to write it down so that we remember. So we have area equals pi times r squared. Okay, so the lesson, it reminds us when we are solving an area, sometimes you might be asked to leave your answer in terms of pi. So I'm going to model an example of what that means because I feel like some of you yesterday were struggling to figure out what that meant. Some of you were just doing too much work. If you leave it in terms of pi, it's actually less work. And some of you were going the extra step and actually doing the calculation by pi, which wasn't necessary. A lot of the answers on yesterday's assignment asked you to leave it in terms of pi. So I'm going to show you that. So if we have a circle and we're told that the radius is 12, okay, and they ask us to find the area in terms of pi, then I'm going to take 12 and I'm going to plug it in where I see r. So my formula would be a equals pi times 12 squared. Okay, so order of operations, we have to do our exponents first. So 12 squared is the same as saying 12 times 12. I'll just make that little note here. Okay, and that would be area equals pi times 144. Now, in this equation, we don't have any other calculations left to do besides this 144 times pi, but they want our answer in terms of pi, so we have to leave pi there. We're not going to operate with it. So the only other thing you would do is rewrite it to have the 144 in front, because that's just mathematically nicer. It's usually how we write numbers that have a coefficient and a variable or pi, okay? The number usually comes in front. So this is a reminder of how you find the area of a circle and leave it in terms of pi. And the way we're going to work backwards today is if I gave you this area in terms of pi, I'm going to rewrite it at the top so I have room. If we were given that the area is 144 pi, in today's lesson, we're going to go over how can you figure out what that radius was. What was that radius that we started with that gave us this area of 144 pi? So the way we can do that is by using the square root, which is what we just went over in the last few slides before this. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, if our area is 144 pi, well, I know that this is our equation. Okay, and I'm going to take this and I'm going to rewrite it for area because I know what the area is. I don't need to write A anymore. I know that it's 144 pi. So we write 144 pi equals the other half of my formula. Okay, hope you're all with me. All right, so now because pi is on both sides of our equation, we could just take it away. We could cancel it out. Our goal is to figure out what r is. So the only reason why we can cancel out pi is because it's on both sides. So let's remove it because it's on both sides, okay? You're basically dividing by pi, but I think it's easier for you guys just to understand that if something is the same on both sides, you could remove it and your equation will still stay balanced. So we'll be left with 144 equals r squared. And then based on what we just did with our square roots, what can I do to figure out what r is? Some number is being squared and it's equaling 144. Well, to figure out what that number is, we do the inverse of squaring a number, which is square root. Okay, so on this side I would say, okay, what number times itself is 144? You could do it in your calculator. You could use your phone. Okay, you just press that. Let me clear this out. You press the square root key. You put in 144. You press enter, and you get 12. So the square root of 144 is 12. I hope that some of you were able to do that mentally. And then on this side, because this number was being squared and we put a square root around it, it cancels it both out, and we're left with r. So our radius of this circle was 12, which we already knew because that's how we started off, but it was a good example to kind of take you through how this whole thing rolls out. So again, if we were given an area in terms of pi, 144 pi, we take that and we substitute in for A into our area formula. So we're left with 144 pi equals our formula. Because pi is on both sides of the equation, we can cancel it out because since it's on both sides, our equation will remain balanced with or without that pi there. Then we had 144 equals r squared. To get rid of that squared and figure out what that number was, we take the square root. And the square root of 144 is 12 because 12 times 12 is 144. All right, let's do another one so that we can see it again. And that's the example that's in your lesson. Okay, so now we are given that the area of our circle is 81 pi. Okay, So I'm going to write my formula for area. Okay, I know that the area is 81 pi, so I'm going to take that and substitute it in where I see A, because the area is equal to that. So I write 81 pi equals the rest of my formula, pi r squared. Okay, and now again, since pi is on both sides of our equation, we could cancel it out and still keep our equation the same. So now it would be 81 equals r squared. And in order to figure out what r is, I have to do the inverse of squaring a number, which is square root. So we're going to square root both sides. I say to myself, okay, what number times itself is 81? So again, you can use your calculator. If you're using your phone, just turn it horizontally, and you should see like a check symbol kind of thing, and that should be your square root function. Some phones, they make you put the number in first and then press it, and some phones you could press it first and then put in the number. So it all depends on what kind of phone you have. All right, so we get that the square root of 81 is 9. And if we square root a number squared, they cancel each other out because that's the inverse operation, and we're left with a radius of 9. Okay? Now, the other part of this lesson is to then have you find the diameter. And at this point, I hope that everyone could figure that out very quickly. You're given the same problem, you solve the radius, and then what's the only other thing you would have to do if they ask you for the diameter? Well, if the radius is 9, you must remember that 2 radiuses make up a diameter. So if the radius is 9, I'm going to take 9 and multiply it by 2 to find out what my diameter is. So my diameter is 18. This is something that a few of you have to review because you are switching the connection between radius and diameter. Okay? A radius is half of a diameter. And, a radius is 2 times. It's 2 times. If you multiply the radius 2 times, you get the diameter. Okay? No, I was right the first time. A radius is half the diameter, and a diameter is 2 radiuses put together. Okay? All right, so I'm going to do one more example, and then you guys are off on your own. I'll show you what you have to do for the remainder of today's lesson. So if we were given the area equals, let me find a number that I can use. Okay. Area equals 625 pi. Okay, so a larger number this time. So I'm going to write my area formula. Okay. I know what my area is, so I'm going to take it and plug it in for A. So I'm going to write 625 pi equals pi r squared. Okay? Again, in an equation, if something is the same on both sides, you can eliminate it and keep the equation balanced. So I'm going to take away pi and rewrite it as 625 equals r squared. And then again, we're trying to figure out what that r value is. So since r is being squared, to inverse that, we want to take the square root. So we're going to think to ourselves, oh boy, what number times itself is 625? So I know it's probably going to be a larger number than what we've been dealing with. So I'm going to go to the side and just think of a few, like 20 times 20. That I could do in my head real quick, right? 400. So it has to be even greater than 20. So then maybe I would go to my calculator and try a few. If I don't have the square root function, this is what you would do. You would do, okay, 21 times 21, 441, getting closer. 22 times 22, 484, still not there. Maybe I'd jump a little bit. 24 times 24, 576, we're getting closer. 25 times 25, 625, bingo. Okay, so if you don't have the square root function, that would be how you can figure that out. So the square root of 625 is going to be 25. And then if our radius squared is being put under a square root, then these cancel each other out and we're left with radius. So in this example, our radius is 25. And then as you keep going in the lesson, sometimes they're not going to just ask you for the radius, they're going to ask you for the diameter. So if your radius is 25, then again, remember 2 radiuses make up a diameter. So then you would do 25 times 2 to find the diameter, and that would give you a diameter of 50. All right, so that's today's lesson in a nutshell. Let me get this back up. So again, you'll do some practice problems. There's some practice problems for you to do on your own. And then once you're done with that, let me get out of this. Some classes are being given this independent practice. I know that 701, 706, and 711, you guys are definitely getting this. So you would complete this next. It's only 6 questions. And then finally, you would do your homework for the day as well. Make sure you submit all of these because that's how you get your classwork, homework, and attendance credit for the day. And then the last thing I just want to leave you with is just be prepared. Tomorrow, you will be getting an evidence of student mastery. So some of you don't have assessment grades in yet. This will count as an assessment. So I would just recommend reviewing everything that we've covered this week, okay, from week 1 to week 4. That's what your evidence will be on. It'll be very similar to the ones that you take in school. It'll be 4 questions based on our topics from this week. All right. Talk to you soon, 7th grade.